Okay, we're back here with period 8.7, topic 8.7, America as a world power. So we're switching gears. We're moving away from the civil rights movement. We will revisit that later. And we are going back into Civil War, I'm not sorry, Civil War, Cold War military action. You look at our objective here. It is explain the various military and diplomatic responses to international developments over time. And so to put this on the timeline, we are focusing on the 1950s and 60s. And a lot of the events here focus on the presidencies of Dwight Eisenhower and John F. Kennedy. Okay, so most of the 50s and then the early 1960s. So that'll put your chronological, that'll get your chronological reference set up. So let's dive into the material. Got a few documents to look at. Got a few documents and pictures to look at and some key events, and that'll get us through this. So first off, a couple of questions that came to mind as I looked at these objectives. Number one, how close did the Cold War get to the United States? I mean, physically and just in terms of overall threat. This is the most threatening era of the Cold War in regard to actual attack happening. So we're going to look at that. And then going to that focus of America and the world, how did the U.S. attempt to exert its power across the globe? What did the U.S. do to demonstrate its power during this time? So let's get into it. Looking at question one, this is going to this historical development here, that Cold War competition extended to Latin America, where the U.S. supported non-communist regimes. We'll talk more about that later, but we want to look specifically at how close the action gets to America during this time. I'm going to click over to Khan Academy here. I want to remind you guys that when you go through these modules, on the left-hand side, you've got all the topics covered, whether it be in an article or videos. Then you've got the practice at the end, the multiple choice at the end. So make sure you guys are doing those. Those are really, really helpful. There's great material in there. You need to be doing that. So again, I'm going to click over here. So these are our notes. We're looking at these, how close did the U.S. get to war, or how close did war get to the United States? And there's a really good opening article here. I'm not going to get into the details of it. I want you guys to read it on your own, but it's discussing the ramping up of the arms race during this time. Okay, specifically, there's the document NSC 68, which was a key document for the time period. It would really shape U.S. defense strategy throughout the war. It essentially said the Soviet Union is really, really dangerous, and we need to focus our defense efforts on countering them or being ready to fight them. And so the big fear of nuclear attack really comes up during the time. There's this interesting article here on the doomsday clock. You guys should read that. But one thing that we usually look at in class is this awesome video. I've attached it to your classroom page. This is the duck and cover video. There's some really good stuff here. Let's see if I can jump ahead to my favorite part. Oh, where's the kid on the bike? You guys need to watch this on your own. It is gold material. I gotta find it. Here we go. Here he goes. We'll even play the sound for you.
Okay, going to his Cub Scout meeting. Tony knows the bomb can explode any time.
Watch this. Here he goes. Oh, bomb. Oh, get off the bike. Bam! Right into the curb. Poor. Yeah, Tommy's parents should have taught him to wear a helmet. It's not, I don't think it's going to be the bomb that gets him. It's going to be his falling off his bike. But anyway, take a look at that. It's good stuff. So that helps us to understand the kind of fear and feeling of, okay, the Cold War is really, really close to the U.S. So NSC 68, duck and cover, we got that taken care of. One thing that, interestingly enough, and this is just something to help our overall understanding of this, Dwight Eisenhower, who was famous general during World War II, he actually tries to kind of tone down the U.S. defense approach to the Cold War, and he's all in favor of, being prepared to fight. But he warns of the long-term threat that a constant arms race is going to bring. Okay, and so I think you'll catch that in your reading in this 25C, but he warns about that, and that's a key thing to keep in mind as we go through this. We fast forward to Kennedy's presidency, the early 60s. We've got the point in the war where things get very, very tense, and this is the closest the U.S. comes to actually being attacked or having some major battle on our soil or near our soil. And so, long story short, the Soviets have begun to influence Cuba. There's a communist revolution there. The Soviet Union puts missiles there. We find missiles there. We attempt to invade and kind of overthrow that regime. It doesn't happen. Then again, we see photos of Soviet missile silos. There's a good video here on Khan Academy that you guys will want to take a look at. We see the
Before jumping into the
missile silos in Cuba, and it's a very threatened time, and we are very much on the brink of a nuclear attack. One thing to note: Cuba is only 90 miles away from the United States, and so it is important to note that because it was a very scary time. So again, you can read about that stuff. Here's a map that shows that U.S. military sites, the Soviet missile sites. That is super close. Florida, all that's, I mean, all the South was very threatened by potential attack from the Soviet Union then. So again, take a look at that as you read. Really exciting time. It's one of my favorite things to teach. I wish we were in the classroom to look at stuff like that. But again, your reading and Khan Academy will help you out just fine. So let's go to the next question. How did the U.S. attempt to exert its power across the globe? I'm going to jump over here to your book again. There is a map in your book right at the beginning of the section that shows the different alliances across the globe, and they all have different acronyms: NATO, CENTO, there's CETO, Southeast Asian Treaty Organization, and these all speak to the bigger idea of the U.S. trying to support non-communists no matter what. And I'll talk about what no matter what means in a moment. But we support countries in Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and South America, as long as they were resisting communism or they were really just not communists in the face of communist approach. We supported them. And so when I talk about no matter what, in many cases, these governments that we were supporting were very authoritarian or very just not good to their people. I think there's a kind of a summative sentence here. Despite American rhetoric, the U.S. was often concerned less about democracy than about stability. The Truman and Eisenhower administrations tended to support governments, no matter how repressive, that were overtly anti-communist. And that goes on with Kennedy as well. I know they mentioned Truman, but we support Vietnam. We support all these countries that have these authoritarian, maybe not the best democracies, but they're at least stable in terms of their resistance to communism. So we kind of remove some of our whole freedom, democracy idea in the name of stopping communism, which is a theme that we see throughout this time period. Personal liberties, freedoms of other people's, not the most important thing. The most important thing, stop communism. Okay, and so you guys will see examples of that as you read. A key term, Eisenhower Doctrine. That is, we've had doctrines before, right? Monroe Doctrine, Roosevelt Corollary. Those are all kind of the same thing. If you note it's very similar. Eisenhower states that we were willing to assist any nation that was going to be fighting against communism. And we would do so with armed aggression. That's the key, because if you remember the Truman Doctrine, really we were going to support them financially, diplomatically. Eisenhower says, we will fight for you. Okay, we will get the military involved. And we do that in numerous cases. And so you guys can read about those in your book there and see them on Khan Academy. And then lastly, we have the space race, which I wish we saw more of in our text. Thankfully, Khan Academy's got a good section here, good article, Start of the Space Race. NASA comes around in 1958. The launching of the first satellite, Sputnik, which was launched by the Soviets, really freaked people out. We were really scared about what this kind of final frontier was going to bring. But we start the space program. There's a really good movie out there. It's called The Right Stuff. If you guys are bored over this quarantine time, this shelter at home time. Find it somewhere. It's called The Right Stuff. It's all about the space program. I might even have it somewhere on my Google Drive. I might be able to attach it for you. But anyway, that's your supplement to your reading and your Khan Academy work. This is America and the World, how we address communism and the Cold War in the 50s and 60s. Big themes. We ramp up our arms, our nuclear weaponry. We support countries that are opposing communism in any way, even if they're not the nicest places to their people. And we advance our technology. We get into the space program. We, again, increase our nuclear weaponry. And at one point, with the Cuban Missile Crisis, things are really, really close to going really, really badly. But that's it. Again, this is a supplement to your reading. Make sure you're doing that stuff. If you have questions, feel free to comment on Classroom, and we will catch up later.